Good afternoon. So I see a lot of tired faces. Um, so this is going to be one of the very hot topic in blockchain, protocol economics, governance. This topic is like there are a lot of great ideas, but they're all trapped in like a one-year-old body. So blockchain itself is a relatively young technology, but the great ideas. So a lot of research has been happening. Without further ado, I would like to ask our panel experts to briefly introduce themselves and explain what they're doing in blockchain space.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matthew Liu. I am one of the co-founders of Origin Protocol. At Origin Protocol, we are building a platform that will enable many different decentralized marketplaces to be built on the blockchain, so enabling true peer-to-peer commerce. The goal is that in a few years, we should be able to have a decentralized version of Airbnb or Uber or Didi. Any of these two-sided marketplaces that currently exist today, how can we move them to the blockchain in a decentralized way, help reduce the transaction fees between buyers and sellers, help reduce censorship and regulation, and provide goods and services that are currently in some parts of the world to all different parts of the world. And also, how do we actually give value back to the early participants in the ecosystem? So a lot of what we're talking about today, crypto economics, how do you put the power back into the people, both in terms of a financial stake and as well as the vocal stake, the ability to help govern the platforms.
Hi everyone, I'm Paul Chen. I'm the CEO and founder of Carbonhood. So Carbonhood is a cryptocurrency exchange. We serve the world with zero trading fee, and we have an ICO service platform that helps like ICO projects to enter the crypto space faster and more secure. So at Carbonhood, our vision is to reshape the future economy with cryptocurrency. And at Carbonhood, we are developing the next generation blockchain technology that is called the Dexon. So Dexon is infinitely scalable block lattice data structure. It's not based on the blockchain data structure. It's a completely innovative new architect to achieve infinite scalability.
Hi, my name is Koji Higashi. I'm a co-founder and CEO at HashHub. It's a blockchain incubation studio in Japan. We help blockchain projects, innovative blockchain projects, work more efficiently in Japan and even outside Japan as well. And we also build our own projects as well. And our area of focus right now is Lightning Network and crypto gaming. Also, I have a personal tie with Taiwan. I was actually living here until recently, and I know a local community from earlier days as well. So.
Hi, everybody. My name is Wayne Huang. I'm co-founder to Amarize Technologies, a cybersecurity company. I've been with Proofpoint the past 5 years, and I've just left Proofpoint to start with my core team, a new startup in the cryptocurrency space.
Great. Yesterday and today, we heard a lot about different speakers and panels talking about incentives, protocol economics, governance. And fortunately or unfortunately, there are a lot of audience whom I interacted with. They came back and asked, what is governance on a blockchain? What is crypto economics? So they have some basic fundamental question. So why don't we take a few minutes and actually define, in your perspective, what is crypto economics? What is protocol economics, governance, and what gives value to a token in a protocol? Matt?
Sure. So I think these are all pretty loaded terms. They're very, very large encompassing terms, right? So crypto economics essentially is how do we actually create incentive systems within, whether they're blockchains or other distributed ledger technologies, to allow the participants to then actually have the incentive to do work on behalf of the greater network. So it's essentially like, how do you align incentives? And so I think the best examples, I think, that are most proven in today's world are actually, mining, right? So Bitcoin mining, Ethereum mining, these are all examples of how the economic incentives have been baked into the very core protocols of what Bitcoin is and what Ethereum is, and many other layer one cryptocurrencies. And that creates those incentives for these distributed parties to help validate the networks, to add the next blocks, to verify transactions. And so a lot of it is just like, how do you actually end up doing distributed work and then rewarding that distributed work? These days, there are many more companies attempting to do different flavors of crypto economics, ourselves included. There's a term called the better than free business model, which is, as a user in the old internet, you can sign up for a free Facebook account, a free WeChat or Line account, and you're using the service for free, but you're actually giving up a lot of your data. And then a company like Google or Facebook will monetize that data with advertising. The better than free business model is, now I'm a user, I'm using a service, how do I actually have a stake in that service? And as a result of my contributions to the network, whether that's uploading new video content, whether that's help securing the network, whether that's doing distributed file storage for the network, all these different types of projects, how do I then actually earn financial incentive and have the ability to actually increase my financial holdings? And so that's like this whole world of crypto economics, which I think is a very, very large overreaching area of research right now that's still in its infancy. And I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done, especially in figuring out how do you actually apply the principles that are currently working to models that are harder to prove out. Things that are not necessarily purely digital, right? Or that are not necessarily purely easily verifiable. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. In terms of decentralized governance, also a really, really fascinating topic, very broad topic. And so a lot of the early attempts are really just token holders have a voice in the network, right? And so they can vote on the directions of the project, whether from a technical perspective or from a monetary policy. And in a way now you have these thousands of different cryptocurrencies and tokens that are running their own monetary systems, that are running their own attempts at decentralized governance. And so it's hard to say, I would say, that there are the perfect models that have already been attained. I think it's going to be a number of years and many experiments in parallel for us to see truly how do you actually have the highest functioning decentralized organizations that can be governed just with the protocols baked in. And it's not, I actually don't think it's a one-size-fits-all answer either, depending on the use case, depending on the market, depending on the specific technology needs and the end-user customers for specific chains, that there may be a variety of suitable crypto economic systems as well as governance systems.
Okay, so actually at Carbonhood we are also developing our own blockchain system. So recently a new idea that's called a dual token structure for economics and governance on the blockchain system has emerged. So what does that dual token model works? Is like we have one is called a coin, and coin is for the payment of the services and transaction fees, others like gas, you run a smart contract system. So it's like a gas fuel, a consumption fuel to use the services on the blockchain system. And another one is called the real token. So the real token is like for the governance. It's like you elect Congress, and this Congress are voting to upgrade the network, whether to upgrade some kind of protocols or not. So it's more like a governance tool or mining a privilege is controlled by another token. So this dual token model can decouple the fluctuation like volatility, which is very high in the crypto world. Because if take Ethereum as an example, if Ethereum is using the Ether as their upgraded proof of stake mining model, and then if the Ether price now surges, and then people will think that in terms of mining, my mining cost will be very high. So it's coupled with your basic token. So once it's decoupled, then the decoupled token, one can be a mining token or a governance token. Yeah, so that will make the whole economy more transparent and clear and easy to manage. That's part of the recent thoughts.
Koji?
Okay, so since Matthew and Popo explained a lot already, so I guess I'll give a little bit different perspective. People say like crypto economics or token economy, vice versa, all the time, but I don't really think they're anything new. We kind of like to name new things and frame it, but it's just an extension of traditional economics, and a lot of the times we kind of say like, oh, this is a crypto economic and it must work or something, but I kind of disagree, and a lot of the things, just because we're saying it's a token economy or crypto economics means it's entirely new or it works. So that's kind of what I would like to say.
Okay, great. So I would like to take this opportunity to also briefly explain different kind of incentive structures we have for various, the common protocols that we see, POS, POW, DAG protocols. What are the fundamental differences in the incentive structures among them? There are a lot of entrepreneurs in the audience, who wants to launch their broad blockchain protocol. What do you advise them when you go about designing these protocols and governance? Wayne?
I like to hear Popo's view on this because I think he is an expert in designing protocols. So for me, I think obviously from a security perspective and from a tokenomics perspective, I see that the industry is moving away from proof of work, and I think that's a very good thing. As a security expert, I see a lot of issues, security issues, with a lot of these models that I'll talk about in my upcoming talks. I have 5 talks coming up, mostly in Europe. But I really appreciate the innovation that's coming out of all these models. How about for you, Popo?
Okay, so I would like to introduce a concept that recently in the blockchain, state-of-the-art system that they want to achieve a full decentralization on the blockchain, because we found out that a lot of systems that's based on proof of stake or proof of work, they will cause eventually a centralization issue. Because we see like in Bitcoin mining, we buy a lot of ASICs and then we got a centralized mining pool. So the governance now is controlled mainly by these mining pools. And then for the proof of stake system, it doesn't need ASICs, but when the token is first distributed, recently a lot of token on EOS is controlled by China party. So it actually causing hard forks of the network. Yeah, so it's actually causing a lot of issues. So recently a new protocol called Definity. Definity is based on a randomized algorithm to select a partial population to do the voting at each block. So in terms of the randomization, it can actually achieve a more decentralized governance method. Of course, the stakes, like the tokens, may still be concentrated on certain parties, but the protocol itself already maximally decentralized the governance to a lot of different entities. And at Dexon, we also propose one is to adopt the Definity's randomized algorithm to do the governance. And then we have another mining protocol is called a proof of participation. So that's force every mining node to have equal voting rights. But in terms of, instead of maybe a asymmetric protocol, if one node controls a lot of voting power, if that node got intruded, breaking, or in malfunction or shut down, then the network will be under a large impact. So we see the future of blockchain governance to adopt these kind of concepts to achieve a more decentralized way.
Okay, thank you. I'll give you a little bit more $1 million questions because there's a lot of expertise among the panel. What is the hardest part in designing these incentive structures for protocol economics and governance? What kind of background one should have, or what kind of questions one should be thinking about in designing them? Matt?
This is truly a very difficult challenge. I'll touch a little bit about some of the stuff that we're personally thinking about on our end. So a lot of the, so who here knows who Naval Ravikant is? Very, very famous, entrepreneur, angel investor, very early in cryptocurrency. And so he's talked about we're developing these crypto economic systems that provide the right incentives for your workers, right? What are the best qualities of that work and those tokens? And so usually, probably the easiest base situation is this work something that is a commodity piece of work that can be done by all different types of workers within the system, right? So different miners or different people staking tokens. Is the work that's being done also fungible, right? So it's the different workers can all do the same type of work, and it's equally as good for the overall supplier. And then also, is it digitally verifiable? So can all the other nodes in the system verify that the workers have done the right work and in fact then deserve the incentives as the Bitcoin miners, right? Or the person storing data on IPFS and receiving Filecoin. And so we've seen these systems start coming into play with some early success. But in an idealized world, you want to be able to have ways of verifying stuff that is not purely digital, that is not purely a fungible type of work, right? And so these are some of the challenges that we're starting to investigate ourselves when we're thinking about how do you actually start thinking about creating incentives for an everyday user, right? Not a very sophisticated miner with custom ASICs, but an everyday user on a future decentralized application to invite their friends to join a system, right? And how can you do that in a way that the user understands, and it's really easy to do, but also is not fraught with security concerns. It's not vulnerable to cyber attacks and malicious actors that can see the rules of the system and figure out how they can cheat the system. And so when we're talking about these new variables where you're trying to go a little bit more downstream with your workers rather than very sophisticated miners or validators, and you're also trying to get a broader array of pieces of work that you're trying to create incentives for. So again, in our case, it might be referrals, or it might be transactions that are completed, or it might be helping bring more data into the system. And so there's a bunch of new models here. There's just a lot of work to do, right? So there's the two-token work model, there's token-curated registries, there's all these different new token economic models are just now being put into practice, and I think we're going to see in the next couple months and years which ones are actually starting to work and which ones are actually prone to fraud and to cyber attacks and other malicious bad actors that could essentially tank some of these early platforms. And so that's why I think that there's many great projects out there. We're all pushing forward really hard together to advance a lot of the current thinking. Just like with all startups, there's going to be many that fail. Their systems are going to be wrong. They're not going to find traditionally what's called product market fit. And so as a result, I think that long-term, very, very, very bullish on cryptocurrencies and crypto economics and decentralized governance. In the short term, I do think we're going to see a bunch of projects realize their initial assumptions, their initial crypto economic models are actually faulty and won't work. And those projects may actually unfortunately not survive the next few years.
I want to talk to the success of a new protocol. As an angel investor, I'm well networked with a lot of investors, and so I often am asked to help them review new protocols, white papers that's coming up. And my opinion is, having looked at these white papers, it often reminds me of the earlier days of internet when working with the W3C to define what you guys use today as the web, the HTTP and HTML protocols. W3C at the time was an organization that was set up right. And so it's got the community support, and because of that, it was able to define these protocols, and these protocols weren't by any stretch well designed, right? But W3C was set up right, they had the right people, so they got an opportunity to start with HTML 1.0 and then move forward, and then they kept on improving it. It's still not the best protocol, but that's what we use today. I think the same thing with these new protocols. I personally feel it has a lot to do with the team behind it, right? No matter how technically sound or better a new protocol is, end of the day, it's really whether you have enough following, whether you have enough believers behind you to allow you to get the adoption that you need. Once you have that, then you can always improve upon that. So when I look at these new protocols, I really think about whether the founder or the team can get the following required to have that opportunity.
Popo, you have any more
Okay,
comments?
so in my opinion, there's another people can analyze the protocols based on like game theory or use theoretical analysis tools to prove that to adopt according to to play the game according to the protocol is actually eventually the only optimal strategy for all the players in the protocol. So actually we can see like in a lot of theses, this analysis of among various consensus or like token distribution and the validation of these transactions protocols. We all have these analyses, and based on that, we can deduce a solid foundation for the protocol to sustain.
Thank you. I myself am a mathematician with a cryptography and computer science background, and I dabble in a little bit of design, architecting protocols, doing a lot of security audits. So sometimes it's like really painful to audit some of these things and provide feedback because you could check the bugs in code, but bugs in design patterns, architecture, and things at the boundaries that interface with other things, it's very complicated. What do you think, what kind of tools we are missing today in the governance and protocol economics area that would help our life a little bit easier?
I actually agree a lot with what Wayne said. It's not really difficult to design a new incentive model, but I think the difficult part is to build an actual product or protocol and maintain its security, because you can always come up with something new, but unless you can prove it works for a long time, you never know if the model actually works or not. So the problem of the current state is that a lot of people come up with new ideas, which is kind of cool, but very few people actually build functional product or functional protocol. So it's very difficult to evaluate if the model's sustainable or sound. So that's what I would say is missing, just lack of product delivery and lack of MVP and that kind of stuff. That applies to protocols, a lot of ICO projects, and any other projects, I would say.
Wayne, from a cybersecurity technical perspective?
Sorry?
Yeah, so I worked in cybersecurity for a very long time, and we are helping businesses run on top of very insecurely designed protocols that are used in the internet, right? The internet was not designed with security in place. But it still works. We can't say the internet is not secure today. You know, in the earlier days of internet, I heard so many people say that, oh, internet, you know, it's not gonna work. It doesn't have this and that security considerations. Hey, but it's gotten us so far. It's worked. How I see the token space is, I see a lot of talent, like every one of you, right? In this space, and I see this space attracting more and more talent. So I really see a lot of these issues getting resolved pretty quickly. And from a security expert, it's a matter of time, right? Hacking any type of system is a matter of time. If quantum computing comes out, then that changes the game for everything, not only for us in the blockchain space, but also for most of what we use in the internet business. So I wouldn't. I see a lot of vulnerabilities, and I'll talk a lot about these vulnerabilities in my talks. But I see this space as being pretty healthy right now in terms of where it's at in its security aspect of things. It's still early, so we see a lot of vulnerabilities in smart contracts. We see a lot of vulnerabilities in exchanges. But I think all of these are going to get resolved at pretty good speed.
You might just jump in for 30 seconds. So one thing I just want to add to both these gentlemen say is, I think a protocol is only useful if people are using it, right? User adoption is the most important thing, and in this case, it's partner or other companies or businesses using the protocols that are being developed today. There is a weird incentive right now because a lot of people want to create their own protocols and launch their own tokens, and it means that there are potentially thousands of different people trying to solve some problem that could better be solved if it was just a single standard or a couple sets of standards working together. So I do think that over time there will be a little bit more consolidation, and then some of these protocols that are actually truly useful and successful will be battle tested. There'll be more and more other projects building on top of them. And then when we see that happening, I think we'll see a little bit of that hardening, right? That natural usage will create more secure, more robust, more effective protocols that can actually be used by many, many end users and actually have an impact.
Unfortunately, we are out of time, so let's give a round of applause for our experts over here, and thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for having us.